On the shining world of Virelia, the sky was the color of molten gold in the evenings. Crystal towers rose above lush green valleys, and silver rivers ran through the capital like threads of light. Inside the tallest of these towers lived Princess Serenia Virelian, the only daughter of Emperor Kalor. Since childhood, Serenia had heard strange bedtime stories from the palace storytellers. They spoke of a distant species called humans. In these tales, humans were said to be unmatched in battle, warriors who could fight without fear, adapt to any battlefield, and turn even the weakest army into a wall of iron. But to Serenia, these stories were nothing more than myths. She remembered once asking her tutor, "If humans are real, why have I never seen one?" The old tutor had smiled and replied, "Because they vanished from our space centuries ago. They only return when the universe itself calls for them." It sounded dramatic, almost poetic, exactly the kind of story adults tell to entertain children. Serenia had laughed back then. Even now, at 23 cycles of age, she still believed those so-called human warriors were legends. Old war propaganda created to make enemies think twice. But while Serenia was safe in her high tower, the galaxy was changing. Beyond Virelia's protective borders, a dangerous enemy was growing stronger, the Draxian Horde. These reptilian warlords had been raiding frontier worlds for years, but lately their attacks had become bolder. Starports were destroyed, colonies were burned, refugees were arriving daily, bringing tales of cities turned to dust. Inside the Emperor's council chamber, the air was heavy. Military advisors bowed low, their faces grim as they reported the latest news. Our fleets have lost 2 more sectors. Draxian forces have established forward bases less than 5 light days from our borders. Morale is falling. Citizens are questioning if the Empire can protect them. Serenia sat quietly beside her father, watching his eyes narrow with every report. The Emperor's voice was calm but cold when he replied, "We will reinforce the border fleets and recall our veteran commanders. We cannot afford weakness." Still, the tension in the room did not fade. Later that night, Serenia stood on her balcony, looking over the capital city. Thousands of lights glimmered like stars below, but even here she could feel the weight of the war pressing in. She thought of the stories again, the invisible warriors who could never be defeated. She spoke softly to herself. Fairy tales, nothing more. And yet, deep inside, she felt a small, strange unease. The next morning, she was summoned to a private council, something rare for her, as she was usually excluded from high-level military decisions. When she entered the chamber, she saw not just the Emperor and his ministers, but also several figures she didn't recognize, elderly officers with medals so old their colors had faded. One of them, General Valor, stepped forward. His voice was gravelly from years of command. "Your Highness, what you are about to hear is known only to the highest ranks of the Empire." Serenia glanced at her father, but he only nodded for her to listen. The general placed a metal case on the table and pressed a hidden latch. A small hologram flickered to life, showing an ancient document with unfamiliar human-like symbols. "This," Valor said, "is the last surviving copy of the Treaty of Iron Stars, signed over 300 cycles ago between the Virelian Empire and the Terran Union. Humanity." Serenia raised an eyebrow. "So, humans are real?" "They were real," the general corrected. "And according to this treaty, they are bound by honor to aid us if we face a threat that could destroy our civilization." She folded her arms, skeptical. "And you think these legendary warriors will suddenly appear because of some old promise?" The general's eyes were steady. "We have already called them. A message was sent through the deep relay nearly 50 cycles ago." Yesterday we received a reply. The room fell silent. Serenia blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. A reply? From them? The general nodded. One has come. A representative of humanity. He claims he can help turn the tide against the Draxians. Serenia almost laughed, but something in the faces of the older officers stopped her. They weren't smiling. They weren't joking. Her father finally spoke. Serenia, I want you to go with the envoy to meet this human. You will represent the royal family. You will see for yourself if the stories are true. Her heart skipped. You're serious? I am. His gaze was firm. The survival of our people may depend on this alliance, and I want my daughter to look into the eyes of our potential savior, or our greatest disappointment. 2 days later, Serenia boarded a sleek diplomatic shuttle, escorted by a squad of royal guards. The mission's destination, a remote moon on the edge of neutral space. According to the message, the human was waiting there. The journey was quiet at first, but inside her mind, Serenia was full of questions. What would a human even look like? Would they have strange features? Would they be arrogant because of the old legends? Or would they be nothing but a tired wanderer who couldn't possibly match the stories? Her guard captain, Thalen, noticed her distant look. You seem deep in thought, Princess. She gave a small smile. Just wondering if we're about to meet a hero from a bedtime story or a fraud who likes dramatic entrances. Thalen chuckled. Either way, it will be interesting. Serenia gazed out of the shuttle window as distant stars slid past. She told herself, this is just a political trip, nothing more. But a part of her, tiny and quiet, was beginning to feel something new. Not excitement, not fear. Something else. Anticipation. By the time the shuttle neared the barren moon, a cold gray sphere lit only by a nearby star, Serenia felt her heartbeat quicken. Landing in 2 minutes, the pilot announced. The closer they came, the more she noticed odd details, fortified structures on the surface, but arranged in a way she'd never seen before. They were built for defense, not beauty. When the shuttle's landing gear touched the dusty ground, Serenia rose from her seat, straightening her ceremonial cloak. The guards formed a protective line around her as the ramp lowered. The wind outside was sharp, carrying the faint metallic scent of machinery. And there, standing alone at the edge of the landing platform, was a tall figure in dark armor. Not Varelian, not Draxian. He stood perfectly still, his posture unshaken by the whipping wind. Serenia stopped at the base of the ramp, staring. She didn't know yet if she was looking at a hero, a myth, or the beginning of something that would change her world forever. The wind swept over the landing platform, carrying fine gray dust across the barren moon. Princess Serenia stood still for a moment, her eyes fixed on the tall figure in dark armor ahead. His stance was calm, as if the cold air and harsh environment meant nothing to him. The guards shifted uneasily, waiting for her signal. The figure began walking forward, steady, unhurried, every step measured. When he reached a respectful distance, he removed his helmet. Beneath it was a human face, sharp features, short dark hair, and eyes that seemed to read everything around them in an instant. His skin was weathered, marked by faint lines that spoke of long travels and battles. He gave a small nod. Commander Elias Ward, Terran Union Defense Force, at your service. Serenia's first thought was that he didn't look like a mythical hero. He looked ordinary. But there was something in his eyes, something steady and unshakable, that made her hesitate before speaking. I am Princess Serenia Virelian, she replied formally. I have come on behalf of my father, the Emperor. He wishes to know if you truly are what you claim. Elias's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. I am human. That's not a claim. It's a fact. The question is whether you believe what humans can do. Inside the fortified base, the air was warmer, filled with the faint hum of power generators. The walls were plain metal, built for strength, not decoration. Elias led them into a small meeting chamber. A holographic map of the galaxy floated above the central table, showing Virelia's territory shrinking under Draxian pressure. General Valor, who had accompanied Serenia, broke the silence. Commander Ward, our people are losing ground. We've heard the stories of human adaptability and resilience. The treaty says you will aid us, will you? Elias studied the map for a moment before answering. The Terran Union no longer spans hundreds of worlds as it once did. But some of us remain, trained, prepared, and bound by our word. I came alone because speed was essential. If we wait for fleets, your worlds will fall before they arrive. Serenia tilted her head. So you came by yourself, one human, against an army of Draxians? Elias met her gaze without flinching. I didn't come to fight your war for you. I came to make sure you win it. The difference is important. His words unsettled her. She was used to commanders boasting of numbers, firepower, and technology. This man spoke as if victory depended on something else, something less obvious. Elias walked around the table, pointing to key sectors on the map. The Draxians fight with brute force. They expect you to respond the same way, by matching them head on. That's why you're losing. Humans, we fight differently. He began outlining strategies, ways to mislead the enemy, to draw them into traps, to make them doubt their own strength. He spoke of using the terrain, of striking where they were weakest instead of strongest. Serenia listened, skeptical at first, but slowly she noticed the room growing quieter. Even the seasoned Virelian officers leaned forward, studying his every move. Finally, General Valor said, These tactics, they are unorthodox, but they might work. Elias nodded once. I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to win. If you follow my lead, we can turn this around. After the meeting, Serenia walked beside Elias down a narrow corridor. She studied him from the corner of her eye. You speak as if you've fought the Draxians before, she said. I haven't, he replied. But war has patterns. Change the field, change the odds. The species you fight doesn't matter as much as how you use the tools you have. Serenia crossed her arms. And you think one human can teach an empire to fight differently? He glanced at her. I think one human can show them the first step. The rest, that's up to you. Her instinct was to challenge him, but she stopped. There was no arrogance in his tone, only certainty. That night, Serenia stood outside, on the base's observation deck. The moon's surface stretched endlessly under a sky filled with distant stars. She thought about the stories she had heard as a child. The invisible warriors who could never be broken. She had always imagined them as unstoppable giants, larger than life. Elias Ward was not that. He was flesh and blood, with no supernatural, glow or magical weapon. And yet she couldn't shake the feeling that he was exactly what the stories had been trying to describe, something beyond appearances. The next morning, preparations began for their return journey to Virelia. Elias would accompany them to meet the Emperor directly. But before departure, a small training exercise was arranged for the Royal Guard to test the human skills. The guards formed a circle in the base's combat hall. Elias stepped inside, wearing only light armor and holding a simple practice staff. His opponent, Captain Thalen, was one of the best swordsmen in the Imperial forces. The bout began. Thalen attacked quickly, expecting to overwhelm the human with speed, but Elias sidestepped, redirecting the strike with minimal effort. Then, in a single smooth motion, He used the staff to trip Thalen and disarm him without striking a single blow. The entire match lasted less than 10 seconds. Thalen got up slowly, giving a respectful nod. "You're fast." Elias handed him back the sword. "Fast enough." Later, as the shuttle lifted off the moon's surface, Serenia sat across from Elias in the passenger bay. "You didn't hurt him," she noted. "I didn't need to," Elias replied. "A true fight is won before it starts. If you know what your opponent will do, you control the outcome." She thought about that in silence. He was unlike anyone she had met before, not just in skill, but in the way he thought. The shuttle's engines hummed, and the moon faded behind them. Ahead lay Veralia, and the Emperor, who would decide whether this lone human was the hope of the Empire or just a relic from a forgotten age. Serenia wasn't sure which answer she wanted to hear anymore. The shuttle broke through the cloudy atmosphere of Veralia, its silver hull gliding toward the capital's main landing platform. From her seat, Princess Serenia watched the shining towers rise in the distance, but her mind was not on the city. She kept glancing at the man seated opposite her, Commander Elias Ward. He sat calmly, hands resting on his knees, eyes half closed, as if he were already mapping every street, every corner of the palace he had never stepped into. She wondered if he felt nervous meeting the Emperor of Veralia. If he did, he didn't show it. When the shuttle touched down, the royal guard led the group through the towering gates of the palace. Elias's presence drew curious looks from every soldier and servant they passed. He moved with quiet confidence, his eyes scanning everything, doorways, guards' positions, even the sound of footsteps echoing in the halls. Inside the throne room, the Emperor waited. He was a tall man with silver hair and the kind of calm authority that made others lower their heads without being told. Elias stepped forward, bowed slightly, not with the deep formality of Verelian custom, but with a soldier's respect. "Your Majesty," he said simply. The Emperor studied him for a long moment before speaking. "So, a human warrior stands in my hall. I had begun to think such things only existed in the pages of old war records." "I'm here to prove otherwise," Elias replied. Their first meeting was brief. The Emperor listened as Elias spoke, of the coming Draxian threat and the strategies that could turn the tide. But before he could respond, a guard rushed in with urgent news. "Your Majesty, Draxian raiders have attacked our outer research station on the moon of Arixa. The defense garrison is overwhelmed." Elias's eyes sharpened. "How far?" 2 hours by jump craft," the guard replied. The Emperor turned to his generals. "Mobilize a rescue fleet." Elias spoke up before they could move. "If you send a fleet, the Draxians will destroy the station before it arrives. I can be there with a small strike team in less than 40 minutes. Serenia frowned. "That's impossible." But Elias was already looking at the Emperor. "Give me 6 soldiers, 2 shuttles, and clearance to command them." The Emperor hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Granted." Within minutes, Serenia found herself boarding one of the shuttles. She had insisted on going, claiming her presence would boost morale for the station's personnel. In truth, she wanted to see this human in action. The jump to Arixa was fast, but as they approached, the situation looked worse than expected. The station's defense grid was flickering, several hull sections already breached. Draxian assault craft swarmed, like predators around a wounded prey. Elias stood in the cockpit, eyes fixed on the readouts. "Shuttle 2, break high and draw their fire. We'll go in low under their scan range." The pilot glanced back. "That's a narrow window." "Then fly straight," Elias said calmly. As they skimmed the moon's rocky surface, Serenia could feel her heart pounding. The shuttle raced into a narrow canyon that led directly toward the station's underbelly. 30 seconds, the pilot warned. Elias turned to the strike team. "We land. Secure the command center and get the Shield generators back online. Move fast, stay low, and don't waste shots. The ramp opened before the shuttle fully touched down. Elias was the first out, moving with quick, precise steps. The soldiers followed, weapons ready. Serenia stayed close, her guard captain beside her. The corridors inside were filled with smoke and the sharp scent of burning metal. Draxian soldiers, tall, scaled, and armored, were forcing their way toward the control room. Elias didn't hesitate. He moved ahead of the others using cover like he'd been here 100 times. His shots were precise, each one dropping an enemy without wasting energy. But more than his aim, it was the way he read the battle that caught Serenia's attention. When a soldier was pinned, Elias signaled 2 others to flank the enemy. When a breach threatened the left corridor, he redirected the team before the Draxians could exploit it. It was as if he saw the fight 3 steps ahead of everyone else. At one point, a Draxian warrior charged directly toward Serenia. Before her guard could react, Elias was there, pulling her aside and striking the attacker with a sharp, efficient blow that sent him crashing to the floor. "You all right?" he asked quickly. She nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "Yes, I'm fine. Good. Stay behind me." They reached the control room where the last of the defenders were holding out. Elias immediately took command, directing engineers to bypass damaged circuits and reroute power to the shields. His orders were clear, never shouted, yet carried an authority that made even Varelian officers follow without question. Within minutes, the station's shields roared back to life, forcing the remaining Draxian craft to retreat. The battle was over. As the team regrouped in the docking bay, Serenia noticed something unusual. The soldiers, many of whom had looked doubtful when they first met Elias, were now exchanging glances of quiet respect. Even her own guard captain gave the human a nod of acknowledgement. On the shuttle ride back, Serenia sat across from Elias again. He was checking a small wrist device, scanning through tactical data as if the fight had been nothing more than a morning drill. You didn't even seem afraid," she said finally. Elias looked up. "Fear is normal, but you don't let it decide what you do." She studied him for a moment, remembering the way he had moved through the chaos, steady and unshaken. For the first time, she began to think the old stories might not have been exaggerated after all. When they landed at the capital, the Emperor was waiting. He listened to the report in silence, his eyes narrowing slightly at certain details. Finally, he looked at Elias. "You fought like the records say your kind once did." Elias simply nodded. "We fight to win, Your Majesty. Nothing more." Serenia glanced at him, wondering if he truly believed that, or if there was something deeper behind his calm words. Either way, she knew this was only the beginning. The Draxians would return, stronger than before. And when they did, she would be there to see just how far the human warrior's legend could go. The capital of Varelia was glowing under the twin moons when the alarms began to sound. A deep, pulsing tone echoed through every street and corridor, followed by the sharp voice of the palace announcer, "Emergency! Draxian assault force inbound. Estimated contact in 20 minutes." Princess Serenia was in the royal strategy chamber reviewing defense plans with the Emperor and his generals when the alert came. The generals quickly activated a large holographic display in the center of the room. Red dots, enemy ships, were closing in fast on the outer defense ring. General Valor's voice was tense. "They're moving too quickly. They must have been hiding in the asteroid field before launching this attack." Elias Ward stepped closer to the display, his eyes narrowing. "They're not here for the capital itself. Their formation is angled toward the central command tower. If they destroy it, your planetary defense grid will go blind." The Emperor looked at him. "What do you suggest?" Elias didn't hesitate. "We meet them before they breach the shield perimeter. We use small strike teams to hit their landing zones the moment they touch down. A general frowned. Our doctrine says we should hold the high ground inside the walls. That's why they'll expect you to do it, Elias interrupted. They've planned for that. If you want to win, you have to be somewhere they don't think you'll be. Minutes later, Serenia found herself in the back of an armored transport, racing toward the city's outer sector. She hadn't planned on joining the defense in person, but Elias had insisted she come. You want your soldiers to fight harder? He had said. Let them see their princess standing with them. The transport shook as it crossed the city streets, the sounds of anti-air turrets firing above. Serenia sat beside Elias, watching him check his weapon and calmly give instructions to the squad around them. You're not worried? She asked. I'm focused, he replied. Worry comes after. When they reached the outer district, the air was thick with dust and smoke. Draxian dropships were already landing, their heavy doors opening to release armored warriors. Elias stepped out first, scanning the field in one quick motion. Alpha Team, flank right through the maintenance tunnels. Beta Team, block the main street. Princess, stay with me. Serenia's guard captain hesitated, but followed Elias's lead. The human moved like he'd been here before, choosing paths that kept them out of direct fire but always in position to strike. The first clash came in a narrow market street. A group of Draxians advanced, their heavy boots shaking the ground. Elias didn't order a full attack. He pointed to two soldiers. Fire on the one in the back. Make them turn. When the last Draxian spun around, confused, the others instinctively shifted formation, creating a gap in their front line. Elias took that opening, moving fast and striking down the lead warrior before the enemy could recover. Serenia was startled. You made them break their own line. That's how you fight a stronger enemy, Elias said without looking back. You make them think they're winning until they aren't. The battle spilled into the lower plaza. The sound of weapons fire echoed off the walls, mixed with the roar of Draxian war calls. Elias directed soldiers like a conductor guiding music. Short orders, precise timing, every move turning chaos into control. At one point, a damaged Draxian transport attempted to lift off. Elias threw a signal flare onto its engine intake. The flare's heat signature tricked the craft's safety systems into shutting down, forcing it back to the ground. Soldiers swarmed it before it could recover. Serenia had never seen anything like it. Her people fought with courage, but Elias fought with purpose. Every action part of a bigger picture she could almost see. Then came the critical moment. Reports came through the comms. Enemy unit approaching command tower from Sector 4. No defense teams in position. Elias's eyes narrowed. That's their real strike force. He turned to Serenia. Stay here. This next part will... Be fast. She stepped forward before thinking. I'm coming with you. He didn't argue, only nodded once. Then keep close. They ran through side streets, leaping over debris and ducking under damaged arches. When they reached Sector 4, they saw it. The Draxian assault unit, heavily armored, moving in perfect formation toward the command tower's base. There were too many to face head-on. Elias crouched behind a broken wall, scanning the area. His eyes landed on a half-collapsed construction crane still hanging above the street. He spoke into his comm. Beta Team, fire on my mark. Alpha, be ready to cut them off. Then to Serenia, he said, When I move, follow. No hesitation. She nodded, gripping her sidearm tightly. Elias stood, fired a single shot, not at the enemy, but at the cranes. Control cable. The massive structure groaned and shifted, spilling a rain of heavy steel beams onto the street. The Draxians scattered in confusion, their perfect formation broken. Now! Elias shouted. From both ends of the street, Varelian soldiers surged forward, trapping the enemy between two advancing lines. Elias moved into the fray, his strikes quick and efficient. Serenia followed, firing at enemies who tried to regroup. Within minutes, the Draxian assault unit was crushed, their path to the command tower completely blocked. When the last enemy ship fled the skies, the city's alarm switched from warning tones to the steady chime of all clear. Soldiers in the plaza raised their weapons in victory. Elias removed his helmet, scanning the field one last time before relaxing his shoulders. Serenia stood beside him, breathing hard but smiling. You were right. Seeing the leader in the fight does make soldiers fight harder. He gave a small nod. And seeing that victory is possible makes them keep fighting tomorrow. Back at the palace, the Emperor listened to the battle reports. When he heard how Elias had stopped the Sector 4 assault with a collapsing crane, he let out a rare, quiet laugh. Perhaps the old stories didn't tell everything about human warriors, he said. They forgot to mention their cunning. Serenia glanced at Elias and felt something new. Respect mixed with curiosity. She had thought she understood war, but today she realized there were ways to fight she had never imagined, and she knew the Draxians would return. When they did, she wanted to be ready. And she wanted to be there, standing beside the human warrior who fought like no one else. The palace had returned to its usual quiet, but Princess Serenia could still hear echoes of the last battle in her mind. Blaster fire, shouted orders, the deep crash of falling steel. In the days that followed, her thoughts kept returning to Elias Ward. She had seen commanders before, some brave, some skilled, but none who fought like him. His style was different, not just force, but thinking 3 steps ahead, using the battlefield itself as a weapon. It made her wonder, could those skills be taught? One morning, she found Elias in the training hall. He was not practicing with advanced weapons or complex simulation systems. Instead, he was moving through a series of basic combat drills with nothing more than a wooden staff. His movements were slow, precise, and controlled. "You're training without armor?" she asked, stepping into the hall. "Armor can protect you," he said, "but it can also make you lazy. I train to move as if I have nothing but my body and my mind." She hesitated before speaking. "Teach me." Elias studied her for a moment. "Why?" "Because," Serenia replied, "if I am to stand beside my soldiers, I must know more than just ceremonial sword forms. I want to learn the human way." A faint smile touched his face. "Then prepare to work harder than you ever have." The next days were unlike anything Serenia had experienced. Elias didn't just teach her how to strike or block. He taught her how to think. Most people, he explained during one lesson, see a battle as a straight line, 2 sides pushing against each other until one breaks. Humans, we look for the cracks, the moments when the enemy isn't looking. We turn those moments into victory. He set up exercises that had nothing to do with weapons at first. Silent movement through the gardens without alerting the guards, memorizing a map after only a few seconds of looking at it, predicting where someone would walk based on the sound of their steps. At first, Serenia struggled. She was used to direct action, not patience. But slowly, she began to understand. Soon after, word came from the front lines. A key supply route to the border fleets was under threat. Without it, the defense against the Draxians would collapse. Chatter. Emperor ordered a convoy to deliver emergency supplies and reinforcements. Elias volunteered to lead it. To Serenia's surprise, he requested her as part of the mission. "You've been training," he said simply. "Time to see what you've learned." The journey took them across space to a contested region where the Draxians had been raiding convoys. Every ship was on alert. Serenia stood beside Elias in the command deck of their transport, watching. The stars slip past. When a sensor alarm beeped, Elias moved instantly to the tactical display. Draxian raider ships, 3 of them. They'll try to hit the center of the convoy to scatter us. The convoy commander reached for the comm to order a retreat, but Elias stopped him. "No, we hold formation and make them think we're weaker than we are. Then we hit them where they expect it least." He adjusted the convoy's path slightly, leaving what looked like an opening in their defense. The Draxians took the bait. Their ships broke formation, racing toward the exposed side. That was when Elias gave the order. Now! Two escort ships, hidden just beyond a drifting asteroid, powered up and attacked from behind. The raiders were caught between the escorts and the convoy's main guns. Within minutes, the space around them was clear. Serenia turned to Elias, astonished. "You knew they'd go for that opening." "They always do," he replied calmly. "The moment they think they've found your weakness, they stop watching for the trap." When they reached the border station, Serenia saw the harsh reality of the front lines. The outpost was built for survival, not beauty. Thick walls, constant patrols, and soldiers who carried exhaustion in their eyes. She followed Elias as he moved through the station, speaking with commanders and soldiers alike. He didn't just give orders. He asked questions, listened to their problems, and offered solutions that didn't always involve more weapons. That night, they walked along the outer wall of the station. The stars seemed sharper here, far from the city's lights. "Why do they call humans the unbroken line?" Serenia asked. Elias was silent for a moment. "Because no matter how bad the odds, we don't stop. We may bend, but we don't break. That's not just in war, it's in everything. We hold the line, even if it costs us everything." The next day, Draxian scouts appeared on the horizon. They weren't enough to attack the station outright, but their presence meant a larger force was coming. Elias decided to take a small group to intercept them before they could report back. Serenia insisted on going. In the skirmish that followed, she stayed close to Elias, remembering every lesson. When one scout tried to flank them, she predicted his move and cut off his path before he could signal his fleet. Elias glanced at her, a brief nod of approval in his eyes. By the time they returned to the station, the scouts were gone, and the outpost was safe, for now. That evening, as they prepared to leave, the station commander pulled Serenia aside. "We've heard the old tales about humans," he said, "but I never thought I'd see one fight. Now I understand why your people made that treaty long ago." As they boarded the transport back to Varelia, Serenia looked at Elias. "I think I understand it too." He raised an eyebrow. "Understand what?" "That sometimes strength isn't about being the biggest army. It's about refusing to be broken." Elias smiled faintly. "You're learning." The twin moons of Varelia hung high in the night sky, silver lights spilling over the capital's crystal towers. But tonight, the beauty of the city was broken by the wail of sirens. The palace command room was alive with movement, officers rushing to their stations, maps glowing with enemy positions. On the central display, wave after wave of red markers poured toward the capital from orbit. General Valor's voice was grim. "It's their largest force yet. They've brought everything they have." The Emperor's gaze shifted to Elias. "Ward, if the capital falls, the Empire falls. What must we do?" Elias stepped forward, scanning the tactical map. "They'll attack from 3 sides to split your forces. We won't let them. We hold the inner city no matter what." He turned to Serenia. "You'll be with me in the central district. That's where they'll try to break through." Within an hour, the city was transformed into a fortress. Barricades rose across streets. Anti-air cannons lined rooftops, and soldiers took positions in every shadow. Civilians were evacuated into underground shelters. Serenia stood beside Elias in the main plaza. The white stone beneath her boots gleamed, faintly under the moonlight, but the air was tense, too still, as if the city was holding its breath. Elias checked his wrist device one last time. "They'll be here in minutes." Sure enough, the silence broke with the deep roar of engines. Draxian dropships descended through the clouds, their black hulls reflecting the glow of burning sky. The first wave hit hard. Draxian warriors poured, from their transports, weapons blazing. Varelian soldiers fought fiercely, holding the barricades. Elias moved through the defense line like a shadow, pointing out targets, calling orders, and striking where the enemy was weakest. When one barricade began to crumble, he signaled a controlled retreat to a secondary position, turning what could have been a collapse into a deadly trap. The Draxians rushed forward, only to find themselves surrounded on both sides by hidden Varelian squads. Serenia fought alongside her guard captain, using the skills Elias had taught her. She was no longer a royal figure watching from a distance. She was part of the line, steady and unshaken. Midway through the battle, a runner arrived, breathless. "Commander Ward, the western gate is breaking. We've lost contact with the defenders." Elias didn't hesitate. "Serenia, with me." They sprinted through narrow streets to the western sector. The gate was half destroyed, flames lighting the sky. Draxians were forcing their way through in large numbers. Elias assessed the scene in seconds. "We can't hold them here, but we can make them think they've already won." He directed the few remaining soldiers to fall back into the inner street. The Draxians, believing the gate abandoned, poured in, straight into a choke point where Elias had positioned 2 heavy cannons. The ambush was devastating. The gate sector held. Hours passed, and still the enemy came. Every time a line wavered, Elias was there, rallying the troops, finding the move that turned the tide. His voice over the comm was calm, even when the situation was desperate. Serenia realized something. His presence didn't just guide the soldiers, it changed them. They fought harder, lasted longer because they believed he could not be beaten. As dawn approached, the Draxians made one final push toward the command tower itself. The plaza in front of it became the heart of the battle. Elias and Serenia stood at the front line. "This is it," he said. "Hold here and they break. Fall here and we lose." The enemy charged, their war cries echoing off the towers. The clash was fierce, metal against metal, the air thick with smoke and sparks. Serenia fought side by side with Elias, moving almost without thinking now, reacting to threats the way he had trained her. When a Draxian tried to flank him, she blocked the strike, giving Elias the moment to counter. At the height of the battle, Elias climbed a collapsed barricade, waving the Varelian banner high. His voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line." The soldiers roared back, surging forward with renewed strength. The enemy faltered. And then, as the sun broke over the horizon, the Draxians began to retreat. By midday, the skies were clear. The capital still stood. The emperor addressed the people from the palace steps. Serenia stood beside him, Elias at her other side. "Today," the emperor declared, "Virelia has seen the return of an ancient ally. The human warrior is not a myth. He is real, and he stands with us." The crowd erupted in cheers. Soldiers saluted Elias as he passed. The old stories, once bedtime tales, had taken new life before their eyes. That evening, when the city was quiet again, Serenia found Elias on the palace balcony, looking out over the recovering capital. "You've changed the way my people see war," she said. Elias shook his head. "You changed it. You fought with them. You held the line." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. But you reminded us why the treaty was made in the first place." Elias looked toward the horizon, where the stars were beginning to appear. "The Draxians will be back someday, and when they come, you'll be ready. That's the real victory." For a moment, neither spoke. The city lights shimmered below, and above the twin moons cast their silver glow. The legend of the human warrior had returned to Virelia. And this time it was not just a story, it was a promise.